Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. Back in the 90s, we handed these out in the seminar. Quantum Leap barf bags. Because we had people throwing up in the seminar. We don't do that anymore. And nobody, well, we haven't had anybody throw up in a long time, but unless your stomach, for those of you that have been scared before, well, most of you are running through life scared, but that's a whole other subject matter. I'm not talking about it. But remember when you were a kid and a big kid, for those, several of you in the room have been bullied. When your stomach feels like it's mud and, you know, your stomach is not gurgitating, but moving around because, you know, out of fear. If that doesn't happen to you when you leave here, you're not doing the program right. Because unless you've lied to me, which some of you have on your paperwork, you're not even remotely prepared to do this. Not even remotely. It's like I'm going to ask you to do brain surgery. You're better prepared to do brain surgery on this mutton head next to you than you are to do this program. I just got an email. By the way, I was wrong. I said Kraft. Bruce the Whipple had on the 100th call, the CFO. It was Corning. Whipple just corrected me. I got an email from him. He said it was Corning, but God, how can you remember that? That was 20 some years ago. One of you that I spent one-on-one time last night, we were talking about some of the attributes, if you want to call them that. But I have almost 100% crystal clear memory from the time I was about 5, 6 years old. 100%. I never forget anything. I have instant recall. And I didn't know that was helpful growing up. If I had known that growing up, but I didn't. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I had no role models other than I had a dad that looked like fucking Hercules, but other than that, and that seemed to suffice me when I was little, that, you know, I'd look up at all his muscles. But when I found out that I had instant recall, or almost instant recall, and I came back to go to university after I flunked out 3 times, been in jail 5 times, et cetera, which you all know about, I went through school like shit through a goose. I finished a 4-year degree, actually a 5-year degree in 2.5 years. I went to 2 universities simultaneously. I took 26 units per semester when the normal load's 12, straight A's. But I didn't figure that out because nobody in my neighborhood, and I guess I must have hung. I guess I did hang out. You know, they used to tease me about it. Oh, ask Danny, he'll remember. And then I pretend I didn't remember because I was being pointed out, just like you, except you were pointing to you because you were a cunt. They were pointing to me because I remembered everything. When did we get arrested that time for rolling those drunks? When was it, Dan? Oh, yeah, February 8th in 1961. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a hell of a moniker. But we're not programmed. But the guy I just got an email from, his name is, I call him Nooner. Like you go home and get a Nooner. I mean, but that's not his name, but he's a 8th or 9th degree Dan, super black belt guy, one of the top martial artist guys on the planet. And he emailed me about he thinks I should charge $500,000. The first thing he touched, he made $300,000, and then he made his 6 months results for his business are 3 times the year results from the year before. Just implementing some of the changes but he was saying that if you don't, in the infamous words of Bruce Whipple, if you don't ask, you don't get. And even though Australia is supposed to have, like Canada, exceptionally hard credit rulings, or in other words, it's harder to get money because, for example, in in the Depression of 1807, the run on banks in 1831, in the Depression of 1858, during the Civil War, and I can go on and on up to the bank collapse of 2008, no Canadian bank has ever gone under or closed. In the history of banking in Canada, no Canadian bank has ever got in trouble. And the reason they don't ever get in trouble is because they don't lend any fucking money. And Australia is not dissimilar. And so the LTV, which we don't use the LTV, loan to value, on various transactions that we do through QLA, is normally 40 to 60% in Australia. 40 to 60. In other words, if it's worth $1 million, they'll loan you either $400,000 to $600,000. Okay. Well, he is now getting 80% loan to value. And part of the reason he's getting 80% loan to value is because one of the current superstars, Jason Nagy, who's from Adelaide, is getting 100% because he's asking. But the historic numbers say that you can only get 40 to 60, and so when you go into a bank, that's what they tell you. And so you being meatheads and not asking, well, he just emailed me and he said that he's so happy because, that frees up 50% more collateral for him. I'm not going to run through the numbers why it does, but it frees up. From 40 to 80, he's actually got 100% more collateral now. So I'm not surprised that his business has tripled. But if you don't ask, you don't get. And currently, right now, to the best of my knowledge, nobody is teaching this. There used to be a guy in the 80s that did infomercials. He used to dress up in the guy with like a flag suit. And he was like Mr. United States, and he had a big hat, and it looked like a flag, and it was infomercials. And he was teaching the things about the banks that I teach. They took him off the air. They took him off the air. Now, I don't know who took him off the air, really. I don't know if the Federal Reserve took him off the air. I don't know if the local states took him off the air, but he was a guy based in Florida. There was a guy based in Florida. It's absolutely novel to me that here in 2020, that, one, you don't know. Because for all the research you guys do, all the fucking shit you read and listen to, you don't know shit. But it's not just this group, it's all the groups. And one after another, I keep thinking, well, maybe this group's going to be better. If anything, they're worse. Because you're reading stuff within your comfort zone. And I contend you're pretending you don't really want to. Because, one, success is more frightening than failure. Because once you're successful, now what the fuck am I going to do? Am I a one-trick fuck? Can I do it again? So you don't do it the first time. And it's like the YouTube guys ask the same motherfucking questions week after week after week after week. And they're presumably listening to this shit on YouTube. And I answer them week after week after week, and yet they still ask the same questions. And some of the names, because I have instant review, some of the names, the guy from the last seminar asked them the same motherfucking question. There's a guy that has his code or his moniker as the Grim Reaper. So if you're listening, Grim Reaper, he asks the same fucking questions every seminar. Dating back 3 years. Now, some of the guys ask the same questions repeatedly because they're waiting to see if they can catch me that I'll give a different answer. That's what I think. That's not what they say. And those are the pretenders. And I tell you this because it's all the more reason why there's no competition. Other than the guys in this room and 200 or 300 people on the planet, you have no competition. And the world's a big place. And if there's only 200 or 300 of you, and the guys that say, I want to be a trillionaire, they make $50 million, I never hear from them again. See, you don't know what it is to have $50 million in the bank. which I think is chump change, but you don't know what it feels like. You don't have even the remote idea. It's like guys can't, I'm told, men can't have multiple orgasms. You can't tell me that. But it's like all of a sudden you discover how to have a multiple orgasm. Now you can't give a multiple orgasm. You know, hop on, slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. You know? And that's just the way it is. We have women that attend the seminar says, and they say not, just like they say size doesn't count. Oh, shit. Anyway, they're nice about it because there must be a handbook they give little girls, you know, when they're 13, 14, 15, you tell them size doesn't matter and it's all right that you had pre-ejaculation and all that shit. But that's all a lie. That's all a fucking lie. Size does matter and pre-ejaculation sucks for a woman. But it's not dissimilar to the lies that you've been told about everything else. What do you guys read? You know, I said it the one day, why do you think Jocko is so fucking popular and Goggins and these guys? Because they're real men. And you're not. Why do you think MMA is so popular now? And we've had cage guys in here, champions. And they wouldn't say shit if it was in their mouth. But once they get in that cage, their personality shifts. Something clicks. But sitting here, you wouldn't know them. Last night you saw who?
Steve Jobs.
Speaking of pricks, I mean, there's another movie coming out about Steve. I think there's been 3 movies now. Every one of them gets worse. Well, the Mother Lode's coming out the end of this year. The Real. What are the takeaways about Steve? Other than he's a prick, or was a prick. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? Why didn't he acknowledge Wozniak or Wozniak?
Woz, you mean the Woz?
Yes.
By the way, the Woz is the mentee of one of my mentees. Now, I'll talk about that when we're off camera. Steve, the world revolved around Steve. As you're going to see some personal letters that I have legally got copies of, before he ever had a dime. The world revolved around Bill Gates before he ever had a dime. The world revolved in their minds. The world revolved around Henry Ford, the first guy, before he ever had a dime. You know, these guys, they were the center of the universe, unlike you. And he didn't acknowledge anybody. It's just like when he went public, it's just another day. When he told Wozniak, if you're not on board, get the fuck out. He changed the stock ownership of his cadre of guys that helped him get started. He didn't give him any stock. That's the way it is. Everybody does the exact same thing. So when you ask me, what do I do with a CFO that I gave 3%? Fuck him. That's what you tell him. How do you say, fuck you in Italian?
Vaffanculo.
That's right. Okay? And like Josh says, you worry about shit that's never going to happen to you. Because you want it to happen to you because then you want an excuse for not being more successful. You guys are pretenders. And not just you. You happen to be here right now. I said the same thing. I've been saying the same thing for almost 27 years. Somebody told me last night, I want to make a mark in life. That's really why you're here. Because you've done dick so far. And even if you don't accept it on a conscious level, you know it at a subconscious level, you have amounted to nothing. You should have rolled down. You know, remember your mom? Well, your mom's big, fat, ugly fucking thighs because she was a fat pig. You should have rolled down. Remember, there's a 25 billion of the little things, and it only takes one to impregnate and make. Well, unfortunately, one of yours impregnated, and she got pregnant with a piece of shit like you. You know how when you have a dingleberry that's a piece of shit that you didn't wipe off your ass? That's you. And when you go out, go home and ask your dad, was I an accident or was I on purpose? And they go like this. I'll bet you £1 million to a penny. At least half of you are by accident. Not because 9 years apart between siblings and that's easy. That's surely an accident. That's stupidity. And it's been proven that you can hear from the second trimester in your mama's fat stomach. Second trimester. That's from month 4 on. So your parents are at university, let's say. Or they're working at McDonald's, wherever they are. And your biological father comes home and your biological mother says, now, I don't even want to get into this we're pregnant shit. I mean, that's sickening to me. I'm pregnant. And he said, you fat fucking cow! We can't even pay the fucking bills and repossessing our car! What do you mean, you're pregnant? You fat bitch! You heard that. You heard that. And there's several of you in this room that can directly relate to that. And when you start thinking about how did my dad treat me, as opposed to my other 2 or 3 brothers that were on purpose. And you know all that. You don't have to Google that shit. You know what it feels like to be unwanted. Steve Jobs, what else about Steve?
He stayed focused for decades. He stayed focused for decades.
Okay. So far, you've only heard about 2 icons, McDonald guy and Steve. They're 90% the same. Success leaves clues. Why is it so? I mean, to this day, this group even, you're not even remotely close to Steve or McDonald's guy. Not even, you don't have one trait that they have. Not one. That you want to be successful. Or what I think, you're pretending to want to be successful. What else about Steve?
You held people accountable.
Gee, that sounds familiar. What else?
He was ruthless about his vision.
Pardon?
He was ruthless about his vision.
And what are you ruthless about? Nothing. Most of you have kids, you should have shot them in the fucking head when they were in a bassinet. Because you fucked them all up. No accountability. Well, you're a result of no accountability or little accountability. Ruthless, savage, accountability.
He shared his doubts and fears only with his mentor, with Sully.
Don't confuse me with the facts. None of these, and the chairman threw him out. And that's what's going to happen to you, poor little weenies. And you're going to write me, I'm going to laugh. I use it to wipe my ass. Because you always think it's not going to be you. And for those of you that think it's not going to be you, it will be you. And what I really like is when a Chinese guy turns on a Chinese guy or a black turns on a black. I mean, I get off on it. Nobody fucks black people better than black people. Nobody treats Chinese worse than Chinese. Nobody treats Indians worse, and I'm talking about Indian from India, not Native Americans, but they fall in the same category. Nobody treats an Indian worse than a fucking Indian. I love it. I love it. Sally says I keep doing this because, believe me, it's not because for your success, it's for my success. Unfortunately, I picked a model that I have to live vicariously through your success. And again, I've told people for 20 years, I'd never do this again. Ever, 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 ever. There's several things I'd never do again. I'd never buy a castle again. Never. $100,000 a month. If nothing goes wrong to upkeep here. I just asked when I walked out of the house, I said, where are the fucking roofers for the flashing? And today's Monday, right? Where the fuck are they? Well, they're not here. Now they're not going to be here for God knows when. If we have a real big downpour, there is going to be a waterfall coming over the main staircase in the main castle, because there was a waterfall just 7 days ago. When I mean a waterfall, I mean a fucking waterfall. We have global warming supposedly to thank for that, because when they built this thing a few hundred years ago, the rainfall, even though it was constant, it wasn't. You didn't get 40 days rain in 3 hours. So they built the drainage system, or when the drainage system was updated in 1840s, based on the waterfall that they expected at the time. Now we get that much waterfall in a few hours. Hence, we have waterfalls from time to time. And I believe that the guys don't fix it properly so they can just keep back, charging me to come back. And we have what's called the Castle tariff. For every 1/10 of a mile that your driveway is, you get charged 10% more. Our driveway is 3/4 of a mile long. So we pay 70 to 80% more than anybody else around here for anything. Anything. It's a Castle tariff. Because they figure if you've got a driveway 3/4 of a mile long, you can afford it. And if you can't afford it, you shouldn't fucking live there. That's their attitude from the workmen. What else about Steve?
He does not compromise ever.
Yeah, all of you do. It shouldn't be such a mystery why you're so poor. Yes, sir.
He saw opportunity and kept steamrolling forward.
Correct. Correct. Yes, sir, in the back.
He knew how to play the entire orchestra.
Dropped out of well, depending what story you want to believe. He dropped out the 3rd hour, the 3rd day, 3rd week when he went to university. But, depending what story you want to believe. He's adopted. When he just started to be successful, his biological parents tried to hook up with him again. He told them to fuck off. Didn't want to acknowledge that it was his daughter until he saw that she perhaps was bright. Let his daughter and wife live on whatever welfare. Yes, welfare. See, those words are even foreign to me. I don't even like to say those words because that shit rubs off. Words are important. And I mean, I can go on and on and on. And I knew him back in the 80s. I knew him. He used to try to throw people out the windows, throw computers at them. He's not the only one who did that. And back in the old days, on your desk, there were big ones like this. Just like you guys. What else about Steve?
He was unreasonably obsessive.
Well, I don't believe he was unreasonably.
To the outside world.
Well, I mean, compared to Bill Gates, he's not unreasonably obsessive. Compared to Henry Ford, he wasn't. First Henry Ford. Wasn't unreasonably. It all depends what your perspective is. Like, I think you're unreasonably all cunts. I don't understand how you can grow up and be because there's only 2 or 3 of you in here that were raised reasonably with, like, not a silver spoon in your mouth, but where you had something. And I'm not saying that's an excuse to be a cunt. But for the rest of you were dirt fucking poor. How can you be a cunt and be dirt poor? Because your dad was a cunt. That's why. Now, I think that's funny. No, it's not funny if your dad was a cunt, but I mean, I can call, my dad has been accused of a lot of shit, but that is not one of them. That is not one of them. He was a murderer. And when I was 13 or 14, somebody gave him at the at the CIA or someplace a pamphlet. He had on bonding. I've said these stories a million times. And so he's going to tell me about the birds and the bees, about sex. The entire talk was about 45 seconds long. You stick your hard dick, you won't have trouble getting your dick hard when you're a kid, in the vagina, and you pump it until some shit comes out the end, and that's sex. Then he took me to a father-son picnic. One of the most embarrassing moments of my life, 13, 14-year-old kid. Remember I told you when he says stand here, short of that tsunami that we looked at, I'm not moving. Never. And they had gym apparatus, chin-up bars and shit, rings over a sand pit at the junior high school. So he says, stand there. He takes his shirt off and he's wearing a wife beater shirt, with no arms underneath his regular shirt, t-shirt. And he goes up like this, and he was an all-American gymnast. Like this, and he gets up into the rings like this, and he goes into a reverse iron cross with his feet above his head, and a dismount like that, and all the other fathers disappeared. Then he comes back and he puts his shirt on. He said, let's get something to eat. He used to hold my hand when I was 17 years old, when I played football in high school. You come with me. When you know how after American football, you come out, and everybody's going out to have fun and fuck around. My dad was standing at the locker room, waiting for me. I'm 17 years old. Let's go home. And he did a few other bounding things, which I still shudder. And when he used to get in arguments with his older brother and sister, he was the youngest of seven, aren't you too hard on Danny? Because I was already appeared that I was going to be all right compared to some of my other cousins. And he'd tell his sister, well, how is your program working out with your whore, heroin-taking daughter? And to his brother, and how's your program working out with your convicted felon that's in San Quentin? San Quentin's a prison. Whose program's working better? Mine or yours? There was no way to answer, but his is working. His working, beating me, worked. Fear works. I wish it didn't work. I wish religion worked. But it doesn't. Or as they say in this part of the world, it doesn't. It doesn't work. If love worked, guys, you wouldn't be here. There's 2 or 3 of you that are religious. Religion is the opiate of the fucking poor masses. Lenin said that. What else about Steve? Anything else about Steve?
He took massive action and double consequences later.
He didn't ever worry about the consequences. And that's all you do worry about. Okay, what else did you see last night?
Dan Locke, TED Talk.
Okay, well, we all know Dan. We don't need to spend any more time on that. Okay, I'm not dismissing him because he's one of my more successful mentees. Came to me when he was 21 years old. Pimples on his face. He was a little chubbier in those days. Flew from Vancouver to Los Angeles, and I don't do meals, but he bought me breakfast. We spent about 3 hours together. I told him what to do. That was 16 years ago, and he did it. Highly unusual. He just came to the seminar hardcore over Christmas, and he came to the seminar again last August. Because his model he can't sell, because his model is him. And even though those are cash flow living models, in other words, they produce big cash flow, but they're not building up any equity. And this year he'll do, and these aren't private numbers, I don't believe. If they are, Dan, about 100 million, plus or minus a little. And most of that's margin. Because what costs other than advertising does he have? None. But he could give the business away, but he can't sell it. So now he's shifting gears, and he's now rolling up and buying assets that he can sell under a different brand. Not dissimilar to Brian Rose and a few other guys. What else did you see?
Christopher Walken, the Lion speech.
Okay. That's okay, YouTube. Thank you.